Things that I felt and I understood as we went through this entire week that I understood took place here. Now, what I'm about to tell you, some of our kids may not realize this. Some of our workers may not fully comprehend this because we were so consumed and focused on the task, just the daily operations. You know, it was just a pretty non-stop deal for most of us throughout this week. But here are the things that I want you to think for a second, and this is why it resonates with me. I told you last week that I was a very happy camper because my daughter, my 16-year-old, went to the workplace for the first time. So last night, as every Saturday, we go through a specific family routine as we get ready for worship on Sunday. You know, my kids have some habits that they have developed throughout the years. And so I saw them going through those routines that we do on Saturday nights. But there was something different that happened yesterday. That she, my oldest, my 16-year-old, she was going through the preparation for worship, but also was the preparation for work, because she's got to go to work after church today. So here she is preparing lunch, preparing some things that she needs to get ready for today. So I was a very happy pastor last night, but I was a happier father than a pastor. I just got to be honest with you. Just to see her, you know, with that desire and that eagerness to move forward in life. Now, here's the one thing that I believe what we did through the entire week resonates with my heart as I get to see my children now moving to that phase in life. By default, I believe God has gifted me, God has called me, God has given me this spiritual gift of what you may call apostleship or pioneering or missionary. What does that mean? That implies that within the last 24 years, which I've been in ministry for 24 years, I've been able to be a part of what is called church planting 3 times. I was able to start churches, 2 in college and 1 about 10 years ago in this area of the valley. Within the last 3 years, I was able to be a part of a pioneering of a university, through Wayland Baptist University. So 4 major experiences that drive me into brand new things. And I love that. I love to start new things. I love to go into the experience of, again, this is in the terms of Bible and the spiritual gift, this is called apostleship. Okay, I'm not calling myself an apostle. All that I'm saying is that I feel and I understand that I've been called to, like a missionary, to start new things in brand new places. So when I see this generation of new people, younger people, such as my kids and many of the ones that were here, they don't fully understand that they're moving into that experience because they're moving into either a brand new school year, they're moving into brand new relationships eventually as they go into the dating mode and then marriage mode, they get into the marketplace, whatever those experiences are, they go into something brand new. What we did this week by looking at this wilderness escape, going in the journey of, again, just Moses walking people through the wilderness for 40 years, in my mind, brings me back to the experience of 2 things. Just listen for a second. Number 1, if we, as a nation, wanted to fully understand the counsel of the gospel, we have to embrace the Bible in a way that we need to understand that God is a God of discipleship. And when I say discipleship, I want you to, in your mind, bring together once again the concept that has been divorced for many, many, many generations. Sometime in the past, the church made the mistake to divorce salvation from discipleship. So what happens is, at 11 o'clock, 4 people are going to go through water baptism to illustrate, to symbolize, and to say, I am a new believer in Jesus. What they need to understand, and we've been hammering this with these people for a while now, is what you're doing today through water baptism is not the goal. The goal is not for you to avoid hell. The goal is for you to bring heaven to earth through your lifestyle. All right, I don't know if you catch that one. I'm going to say that one more time. The goal is not for you to avoid hell when you die. That's not the goal. Jesus did not die so you can live like there is no God on earth, and at the end we have a Christian funeral where we just say he received Jesus when he was 14, died at 87, and went to be with the Lord. See, that's not the purpose of Jesus dying on the cross. Jesus died on the cross so we can bring heaven to earth, which is reflected on avoiding hell at the end. So I'm all for you avoiding hell. I don't want you to go to hell. I hope that no one goes to hell. It was not created for you. It's not a place that was designed for you. It was designed for Satan and his demons. Unfortunately, many people are rejecting the gospel and ended up in hell. But at the end of the day, here's what I want you to know. The journey of becoming a disciple is a process that will last the entire life on earth. It begins by a relationship and a decision and a commitment to follow Jesus through salvation and obviously water baptism. But that's not the goal. That's just the beginning of the journey. The goal is Christ likeness. So when you think about the gospel in our communities, and the gospel in a nation like the United States, and the gospel across the world, thinking right now of World Cup, when you see many nations coming together to celebrate this sport, and you see the globalization of our culture, you cannot help but think that God is in the business of not only saving people, but making people like Jesus Christ while they are on earth. We call this process discipleship. Here's my point. My point is that I believe the wilderness journey, the journey that these people took for 40 years, is the perfect blueprint, the perfect model on how to disciple a nation. And this is why. Just please think with me for a second. Just common sense for us before we go to Bible. Moses, what he did, he took a bunch of slaves, Like you don't realize how many people Moses actually brought with him. Lots of people who all they knew was slavery, which implies the worldview was pretty much tell me what to do and I'll get to do it. That's pretty much the worldview of these people. Many of these people came from a very polytheistic, meaning multiple god and goddesses, deities. And Moses takes them and 40 years of pilgrimage, 40 years of complaints, 40 years of rebellion, 40 years of just a struggle with this crazy people. Moses is able to build a foundation that eventually becomes a nation. And this nation is the people of God. So my take throughout this week is, as we raise a brand new generation of men and women, is that I believe our nation, United States of America, needs to look at Moses' pilgrimage on how to disciple United States of America once again. That's my take throughout this week. So some of our kids may not realize that, but again, as they jump into new things, they gotta realize that there's very, very crucial principles that you find through this week. One of them had to do with the foundational one. We said from day one that God is with us. And Moses had to learn this principle the hard way. Moses had to go through literally the valley of the shadow of death by 40 years of wandering, or in this case, being a fugitive of the law. He finally finds himself, he finally encounters the presence of God, and at the end of the day, here is the principle that I want you to take. Because listen what Exodus 3:12 says, based on the conversation between God through a burning bush and Moses. When Moses realizes that the task is bigger than his life, he's got to come to that question and says, I'm not going to get to go before Pharaoh and tell him that he needs to get all these slaves out and let him go. And God basically responds, there is no military strategy, there is no new thing coming your way, there is no new wave or philosophy or revelation. Here is the answer to the task. I will be with you. How does that sound for an answer to you this morning? Can you picture a generation of men and women who embraces the presence of God more than they or we embrace what the presence of God brings? So Moses is challenged with this task to say, hey, all that you need is my presence, and especially when they go through the very first experience, which again, this is just nonsense and crazy, beyond comprehension, that Moses finds himself a few kilometers, a few miles away from Egypt, and he realizes by checking his iPhone and seeing the Facebook post from Pharaoh's Twitter account that Pharaoh changed his mind. Let's go and bring those guys back to the slavery. After he realizes that he did what he did by letting these people go, he says, no, this is not going to work. Let's go and get them. And once the Egyptians are going after them, Moses finds himself literally between Egyptians, which, by the way, they were not coming to ask them to come back. I believe they were coming to kill them where they were. There is no second opportunities in this people's mind. They're going to die. And God showed them His power by literally opening that Red Sea before their eyes. Why is it that Moses was able to do this? Here's a tape that I want you to kind of digest with me for a second. And hopefully we install that principle in our children's throughout this week. God never promised the absence of struggles. So if you are facing the struggles this morning, it's called life. And let me just be honest with you. Let me just go a little further there. If you are a follower of Jesus, the struggles are expected. See, what Jesus does, He never omits or takes away the struggle. What He does is He gives you a different perspective of the struggles. So right now, maybe for some of us, the issue is not the problems that we have. Maybe the issue, just look at me for a second on this one. The issue may be that you're still seeing the struggles the same way you used to see them before you met Jesus. And if your perspective of the struggles is the same prior to Jesus, God showing Himself to you, and you see life or the struggles in the same manner, that's on you. It's not on God. That's on you. And again, we went through this very carefully because when we look at the principle number 2, once God shows up, we learn that He also gives us what we need. Now, here's what I want you to, for the remainder of the morning, I want you to begin with the negative of the statement versus affirming the positive. Meaning, if God is with us, one thing that the presence of God is going to do in your life is He's going to show you, He's going to separate what you want to what you need. I'm going to say that one more time. What you want to what you need. And I'm bringing this up because what this statement told us throughout this week is that whether you like it or not, by default, if day one is omitted, if God is not with you, one of the evidences that God is not with you is when you look at this statement and says, I don't need what God provides. I am self-sufficient. I can do it on my own. I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm educated. Who needs God? So this is where the fool says in his heart, there's no God. So listen to the words of Jesus. On Matthew chapter 6, verse 8, that we read last week, it says, for your Father knows exactly what you need, even before you ask Him. So again, once the presence of God shows up, the next thing you're going to realize is that He knows you better than you do. And I'm bringing this up because I had a conversation throughout this week in one of our dinner times. We ate dinner every single day before we went to BBS. And kids, everybody was welcome to come. And there is this young 9-year-old kid, 8 or 9, little girl, came and sat down with me, never met her before, and she starts sharing with me her story. And part of the conversation went like this, and she basically gets up one where she says, I have a new dad. And she goes on with the story, telling me about the new man in their lives. and tells me the entire deal, what's happening at home. And part of this desire of this young lady is just to share the need that she has for God. Because ultimately she conveyed to me, she says, my family is not listening to me. It's not paying attention to me. And she, right now, at age 9, which again, as a 41-year-old man, not only am I 41, she's 9, not only am I a male, she's a female. Get the picture? Two different worlds, two different mindsets. She struggles with image at 9-year-old. She struggles on her appearance, on how she looks. And I'm thinking to myself, sweetheart, have you looked at my hair? I mean, appearance, it has changed. And it's gradually changing. You know, I mean, everything changes. But again, she's 9 years old. I understand what's happening. But here's the bottom line. Throughout this week, we try to convey to them, you may perceive these things, you may see this way, you may hear these things, you may feel this way, but ultimately, God knows what you need. That's the bottom line. So maybe the insatisfaction, maybe this completely emptiness in people's lives in today's culture may not be because of the lack of things that we may be missing, the lack of the stuff that we may be going through. And I know there's a lot of poverty in the world, I know there's a lot of needs in the world, but ultimately, what we try to convey to this young lady and 100+ kids throughout this week is, even though you have a new dad, even though dad is not there anymore, even though people may fail you, God knows what you need. Stop trusting the things of the person who are not trustworthy. That was the principle for us on day 2. Now, how we illustrated that is that we conveyed that God provided water through the rock. Remember the story? Moses in the wilderness? Problem with that. The water at the beginning was bitter. So God performs a miracle and gives him drinkable water after that. And then we discovered through the lesson, this is how God provides, that every single evening God provided meat. And this meat is called quail. And God provided every single night for them. And then what he did in the mornings, every single morning, he provided bread. And it's called, come on, manna. Glad you guys showed up for VBS. Manna. So the provision of God on both scenarios, evening and morning. And obviously we went through the whole thing about explaining how there was, at the end of the week, the provision for 2 days. They're not supposed to get more than for the day. The portion, the necessary portion that was only for that day. Otherwise, the food will get bought. So the provision of God, and how difficult that is for us to trust God. Number 3, here we go. On day 3, we discover that if God provides everything, the provision of God, once again, is not the absence of the struggles. Let me just take you back into the whole scenario why we're doing this again. We're going to get 4 people to get baptized. Baptism is simply the beginning of the journey, that ultimately the goal is not even, please listen, it's not even. The goal is not even or exclusively heaven. The goal of this people leaving Egypt into the promised land, the goal for the people who will get baptized is not living an old life and then moving into eventually heaven. The goal is Christ likeness. The goal is for you and I to embrace a worldview that reflects the values, the understandings that Jesus had when he was on earth. That's the goal. So here's the point. Maybe, just maybe, and again, I want you to just kind of dialogue with me for a second, even in your mind. When we talk about God providing what we need, okay? Providing what we need. The implication is that we have needs. So let's get this nonsense that you don't need God. You are a fool if you think that you can do it on your own. Secondly, once you embrace the fact that God provides what we need, what you need to be ready for, and our children have to understand this principle this week, is that what God is about to provide you may not be the things that you think you need. And once again, if the goal is Christ likeness, the question now comes, what is it that I need to grow, to imitate, to advance into the image of Jesus. And this is what I believe you can